In a quiet suburban town in the United States, there was an old woman named Margaret Hale. She was 76 years old, soft-spoken, with silver hair always tied neatly in a bun and hands that trembled slightly when she held a teacup. She had once been the heart of her home, raising a son, caring for her husband, and keeping every corner of the house filled with warmth. But life changes when the people around you change. After her husband passed away, Margaret's son, Daniel, brought his wife, Laura, into the home. At first, Margaret was hopeful. She thought a new generation in the house would bring laughter again. But Laura was different. She wanted control, space, and a life without burdens. Slowly, Margaret became less visible in her own home. It started with small things. Her chair in the living room was moved to a corner, for better space. Her photos were packed away, to make things modern. Then came louder complaints. She leaves things everywhere. She's too slow. She needs too much care. Daniel stayed silent. He loved his mother, but he hated conflict more. One evening, Laura finally said what had been building for months. "This isn't working. She needs to go somewhere else." Margaret overheard it. She said nothing. She simply went to her room and sat by the window until morning. The next day, without a proper argument, without a real goodbye, she was taken to a small senior residence across town. Laura called it the best solution. Daniel called it temporary. But Margaret understood the truth even if no one said it aloud. She had been pushed out. Days turned into months. At the residence, Margaret was quiet. She did not complain. She spent her mornings knitting, her afternoons watching the garden, and her evenings praying for her son, not for revenge, but for understanding. But life has a way of teaching lessons in unexpected ways. One winter night, a heavy storm hit the town. Snow fell aggressively, roads froze, and power lines collapsed. Within hours, Laura's perfect world began to crack. The house became cold, pipes burst in the basement, and Daniel had to rush to the hospital after a sudden health crisis at work. Laura was left alone in a house she never truly learned to manage. For the first time, she felt fear, not of people, but of silence. The kind of silence Margaret once filled effortlessly. There was no warm meal waiting. No soft presence in the house. No calm voice to guide her through chaos. She tried to fix things, but she failed. She called repair services, but no one could come in the storm. She sat alone that night, wrapped in blankets, realizing how large the house felt when it stopped feeling like a home. Not as a burden, but as the woman who used to make everything work without asking for anything in return. The next morning, when the roads finally opened, Laura did something she had never done before. She went to the senior residence. Margaret was in the garden, slowly brushing snow off a bench. When she saw Laura, she did not react with anger. Only quiet curiosity. Laura's voice trembled. I made a mistake." Margaret looked at her for a long moment. Then she asked softly, "Which one?" Laura's eyes filled with tears. Thinking a home is just walls and furniture, and forgetting the people who hold it together. Silence followed. Then Laura did something she never thought she would do. She stepped forward and held Margaret's hand. "I don't know how to fix what I broke," she said, "but I want you to come home." Margaret didn't answer immediately. She looked at the winter sky, then at the young woman standing before her, no longer proud, no longer harsh, but human. After a long pause, she said, "Home is not a place where you are sent when you are no longer needed." Laura lowered her head. Then Margaret added, "But it can become a place where people learn to need each other the right way." Months later, Margaret returned, not as someone unwanted, but as someone respected. Things were different. Laura changed, not overnight, but slowly. She began asking Margaret for advice. She listened more, spoke less, and learned that kindness is not weakness, it is structure. And Daniel, once silent, finally found his voice. Because sometimes, life does not punish loudly. It teaches quietly. And sometimes, the lesson comes only after you lose what you thought you could live without.